I need my Uber driver with that like calming meditation whistle that she blew for me the other day.
I didn't do that for you. I'm sorry.
That was no, you're right. You didn't.
You did.
This lady was cool. She talked about frequencies and communicating with animals and what kind of voodoo was
Okay. Who wants to do the intro?
Bev.
Okay. Again?
I don't care. I mean, I can do it.
Mack.
So this is so-and-so and you're watching Catching Up with the Camdens?
Start with this is Catching Up with the Camdens.
Then
blah, blah,
so-and-so.
blah. I'm so-and-so.
What?
Okay.
All right. This is Catching Up with the Camdens, and I'm Mackenzie Rosman.
Okay, let's do that again.
I was waiting for
You tried to rush through it. But you
Oh my
didn't.
God, this is back to like literally
You
like
didn't
I
make it.
remember. Do you remember there was episodes where you used to say things as fast as you possibly could? And we're like, what? When you would do your lines, like she would be like, and be done.
Well, I was telling you that it could cause blindness, injury, organ damage, and death. It was like the disclaimer.
It was the fine print.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's try again.
Ready? This is Catching Up with the Camdens, and I'm Mackenzie Rossman.
I'm Beverley Mitchell,
And I'm David Gallagher.
and we are excited to this episode talk about how it all began, like how we got into the business.
The origin.
So the origin story.
Yes.
So who wants to go first?
David.
David.
Me? You want me to go first?
Yeah.
All right. Geez. Well, it all started when
It all began.
So I'm from New York, and when I was 18 months old, my mom started taking me out to calls. The way she puts it is that like she did it because she thought I was cute and she wanted to see her kid on TV. And so the first thing she ever took me to was a print call in New York, and I booked it. And so that was like the kind of dopamine rush that she needed to be like, well, this is what we're doing now. So, and then it kind of went from there. And I did my first commercial when I was like 4. And I did, and then when I was 5, is when it's this whole time. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so my family was kind of growing this whole time. And then when my dad started working with me on auditions, I started getting more into theatrical stuff, and I did my first film when I was 8. And that was the first time I'd ever been on a plane and ever we had to go to Canada, like left the country. I did Look Who's Talking Now with John Travolta and Kirstie Alley. And
It's such a cute movie. That was such a fun movie.
and and that was a crazy experience. Learned how to swim on when we were out in Canada that time. Like that was me and my dad. That was like our first adventure together. You know what I mean?
Sweet.
So that was fun. And then after that, I did Phenomenon, and then after Phenomenon, I did theater. So I got, which is another kind of crazy story, but I was not a theater kid. I could not sing. I couldn't dance. But for some reason, I got into a audition
Look at you.
for.
Oh.
Great. There it is. And I remember when it came out in '94, and like going with my family to the movie theater and like taking pictures in front of like the poster outside our local movie theater and stuff like that, And it was, I was always just excited to make my family proud and see how excited it made everybody, it was such a big deal to our family. And anyway, when I was 10, I had gotten in on this Broadway audition, and I did Christmas Carol the first year that production was in New York.
On Broadway?
Yeah, it was off Broadway. Was it the theater that was attached to like Madison Square Garden, or like in that it was, I forget the name of the, like exactly how that goes in theater. It was my only theater experience. And And I was basically just the wild card on that set. Like all the other kids were theater kids that were trained in dancing and in theater acting is a whole nother ball game. It's a completely different thing. And I was just like the kind of like oddball, like loud New York kid that they hired. And I played young Scrooge and I was in a couple of numbers and stuff. And then right after that season, so that was over the winter season, it was the show. My family decided, because I had a lot of momentum in that moment in my career, because I had the movie coming out and I just came off the stage show, and my family was like, we're going to California this year. And we just kind of like picked up and jumped on a plane with most of our thing, whatever we could bring, and went to California. And when I came out for that pilot season, I was up for 3 things. So I had gotten into the first one I remember specifically was the Pauly Shore show.
Okay.
So I was testing for the Pauly Shore show. The second one was a film. And honestly, I can't remember if it was one of the Tim Allen movies that I had tested for. I've tested twice with Tim Allen back then in the 90s. The first time was for the Santa Claus, and the second time was for a movie called Jungle to Jungle. And I tested for both of those films. I don't remember which one was this year. It might have been the Santa Claus. And then the third one was Seventh Heaven. And
I didn't know this.
Wow.
We came out here, on a whim, and then I tested for all these things, but then one after another I had lost them.
Right.
And so I lost a Pauly Shore show, I'd lost a film, and then the last thing I tested for was Seventh Heaven. And my story about the test was that we talked about this a bit at 90s Con, was that, we were all there for the mix and matches and the executive read. And my parents always did this thing. So when I worked with like John Travolta, like I was 8 years old and I didn't know who John Travolta was. And so they'd always kind of go like, all right, so you're working with this guy and he's from these movies and he has this, and they'd kind of break down for me, for 8-year-old me, like what, the person that I was about to meet, whoever I was, there to impress. Same thing with Tim Allen and, everybody that I was,
You did your homework.
kind of, they would do their homework and then kind of break it down for me and they're like, go. And so the thing we did for Seventh Heaven, it was Aaron Spelling. And they had explained to me that who Aaron Spelling was, and he'd produced all these TV shows and stuff. And I walked into the executive read and I was just like, well, before we start, I was like, which one of you is Aaron Spelling? and everyone just kind of, like the room kind of was quiet for a second. And then this little old man in the back kind of like raised his hand and smiled. And I was like, oh, well, I hear you're a very big deal around here. I just wanted to shake your hand. And I went, marched over to the executive group and shook his hand. And then I went back and did my scene. And the scene for the pilot was all the audition stuff for me was the wanting Happy. It was all about how I wanted a dog. And I had a lot of experience in this because Look Who's Talking Now was also about me and my dog. So this was kind of like my lane at the time.
Familiar territory.
Yeah, this was I was kind of known for this. The kid with his dog was my thing. But yeah, that's the thing that had pushed me over the edge and got me into the show with you guys, was that, that I had ingratiated myself to Mr. Spelling and kind of like, made a fool of myself, but I'm sure in a silly,
Not
cute
at all.
way.
I think that's actually what, I'd hire you. And I think it shows the gusto, and also just like, I do remember us all kind of just standing in line, like just being stared at to like for everyone to like look at us and to see us. And I think I actually remember like you kind of like looking down and like just like sizing everybody up. Like he was all like, I just remember like this little face just kind of like, and I remember being like, just get back in line. Like I felt like it was almost like a lineup.
It did feel a bit like that for sure.
Yeah. I was just fearless as a kid, I had that, we were from New York, we're a very loud family. Like I was kind of big and boisterous and wasn't afraid of adults. And I wasn't afraid to make a fool of myself or kind of like put myself out there. And I think that energy is kind of what carried me through my career when I was young and got me to all the, through all the doors that I ended up
I just
kicking my way
also
through.
remember immediately being taken by your maturity level, because I also started not as young as you did. I started when I was 4. I was throwing a temper tantrum at the mall because I was hungry, and I was with my aunt, and she just did not understand that you need to feed a child. So I threw myself down on the floor of the Sherman Oaks Galleria and got discovered by Corey Feldman's mom was my manager. And
Really?
that's who
Wow.
discovered me and brought me into the business. And I booked my first commercial like within just a few months, and then I booked my first big national commercial, which was Oscar Mayer, which at that time, I don't know if you guys had this experience, but like they used to book like a lot of kids to do the same commercial because they didn't know if a kid was going to show up and actually be able to pull it off. So they would literally have like, it'd be like 5 days of people like filming the same commercial, and they had 5 different kids, and but you also did multiple commercials. You didn't just do one, and then you never knew if your commercial was going to hit or not. And so mine was the Oscar Mayer commercial, which actually did do pretty well. And it actually from there kind of it just kept snowballing, and I kept working and doing like a lot of guest stars and all of that stuff. And I always felt like I was very mature and always like prepared and ready.
You still are.
I'm sure. I know. I'm sorry. But I do remember at the WB Ranch, which is so sadly not there anymore.
What is it now?
They're building new studios. I just drove by it the other day, and it's heartbreaking because it's just leveled. It's gone. The ranch is gone. And so many of our WB memories were all there. Like that's where we tested. And I remember like for Seventh Heaven, when I first auditioned, I didn't get a call back. And I was like, no, this is my role. Like I need to be Lucy. And it was the very first time in my life that I fought to get back into a room and to be seen again. And I fought to get back in there and made it all the way to network. And I just remember like being so excited. And Jessie and I hit it off right away. I think I literally like made her sign her picture, her headshot. Like, and I was like, we're going to do this. Like, this is going to be us. I can feel it. And I remember you, and I remember your maturity level. And I also was like, oh my God, he's been in really big movies. Like, he's like a movie star. And I was like, I was so impressed by you. And Mack, you were just this like little pipsqueak that was just like completely, we never knew what was going to happen, which I loved. It still rings true. Actually. And I also just remember Barry being too cool for school. Like I just remember him just being like, I'm Barry. Like with his hair.
I don't remember Barry at the mix and match. I remember meeting Barry when we met Stephen and Catherine at the table read.
I think he was there. Maybe he left early, but I definitely remember Barry.
No, and also I'm sure I was just in my own world,
Well,
but like
Yeah.
But that was also during the times that, do you also remember like it was always the same kids that you would go up against? So like we'd always go to network with like the same type of kids. Like, so it was always like.
And for me, it was both coasts because there were kids that I always was up against things in New York for, and there were kids in LA there were a few like blonde-haired, light-eyed kids in New York that I would compete with all the time. But out in LA, there were lots. So like it was strange for me because in New York I was more of the alternative look. You know what I mean? Compared to most of the kids that were being cast in a lot of stuff. It's funny you say about commercials, about how they'd hire multiple kids to see which ones would play out. Because one of the things that I was really great at back then when I was young is that I would get hired for the commercial as like second string or whatever. Yeah. And then on the day, someone would choke and they'd be like, you're up. And I'd be like, all right, I got it. This commercial's mine now.
It's funny, I too did a hot dog commercial before Seventh Heaven.
Did you really?
Yeah. Hormel's hot dogs. They're like fat-free hot dogs.
What are some of the commercials that you guys did?
I filmed it at the same house that we shot the pilot at.
That's crazy. The Big Yellow House in Pasadena.
In Altadena.
Oh, so that's the pilot house. But the other...
Oh, yes. You're talking about Santa Monica.
It was Altadena. It was that house,
Altadena.
the big one.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I did a Tufts healthcare commercial before that. And it was kind of funny. So like they told all the little girls to bring their baby doll with them for this commercial.
I don't know where this is going, but it's making me laugh.
I brought my doll. I named her Shayna Jackson. And I never realized this, but my doll was black. actually my baby doll. And when I went to the commercial, they swapped my doll out for a different doll for some strange reason, because I guess she didn't look like me or something. And I was just like so upset that I couldn't actually do the scene with my own.
That you couldn't do the
real
scene with your doll, who you
Shayna.
loved. That was the point.
Yeah. She was just the only
It's funny.
non-creepy looking one at the doll store when I went to go pick her up.
It's a sign of the times, though. That's definitely like something that they would have done back then.
Yeah.
In
that
like
They would never
1995.
do now.
That would they
Yeah.
would not do now,
They would
or
not.
or it would
Yeah.
be kind of the other way around.
Poor Shayna.
you know?
So
Yeah.
our Shayna was great, and our seamstress on Seventh Heaven used to stitch Shayna's head back on and her sides. She had a lot of repair from Lua. Lambert.
It's a well-loved doll.
It was well loved.
The best dolls.
Shayna.
Wait, but so what other
Sorry.
commercials did you guys do?
I think I just did those two, and then I did a Nike commercial while we were shooting the show. I do remember testing, and it's funny, I did something similar. They say, although I don't know if I actually remember this, but I've been told this numerous times, that I walked up to every person in the room and shook their hand. And I was like really little, and they were
You
like,
were
"Oh,
tiny."
that's so cute. Let's hire her."
And we'll be right back.
So much of the game when we were little was just not being scared of adults.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like walking up to adults, speaking clearly, being confident, and like that
Yeah.
was most of the challenge for a lot of kids. You know, a lot of kids
definitely
could
was confident
perform,
with
but were still
adults.
shy.
You needed
know?
to have moxie. I think like
Yeah.
that was it was at that time the industry was like the kids that came in. I remember one commercial audition. I was in the waiting room for over 3.5 hours. I remember telling my mom I was hungry. Let's just go home. And we knew the casting director. She's like, "No, we can't. We have to stay. You know, this is somebody that we know." And so I went into the audition and I was like, "You couldn't find anybody already? Like, what is taking you so long? Like, honestly, you've seen everybody." And they're like, "You got the job." And then I finally just was like, "Let's go get something to eat." And we left. But it was something, and that's actually what I feel like what's sad now, because so many people who are getting in the industry right now
Self-tape.
don't get that experience. Like the joy for me was auditioning and being able to like go in and have those relationships with the casting directors and like being able to like express yourself that way and show who and what we are. Now everything's self-tape, and like you find so many actors that like they talk to themselves in the mirror for so long that they forget like how to interact. It's weird. It's a different.
Yeah,
it's a
I
different
don't know. I
animal.
mean, I tend to actually not that I audition anymore, but after the Seventh Heaven, I had a lot of anxiety about auditions because I was so young when I started and got Seventh Heaven or the part that I don't really have the memory of like going in there and owning it.
Well, yeah, because you started.
So-
You had Seventh Heaven when you were
Yeah,
6.
You were
So I
6.
really do not find auditions a comfortable place to be, and struggled with anxiety about that. So the self-tape was like ideal. I'm like, all right, I could just
Oh, I can't
I
do
mean,
do this
that.
and send it in.
I know auditions was life when I was
I
a kid. Like
loved
that was
auditions.
the
But when
way
I
of
was a
life.
kid,
You
like-
go into
like,
the
I do-
city, do 3 or 4 a day.
Yeah.
I remember I got my start because I was hanging out with a friend in kindergarten one day, and this guy who my friend was in acting classes. I was not. I was just hanging out. And his mom was watching me because my mom was not watching me. and this guy sticks his head out of a window and was like, "That's a really cute little kid. You should call my friend." And his friend became my first manager, Terrence, whom I recently...
I love Terrence.
Yeah,
He was so sweet.
I caught up with Terrence this past year, and he's a sweetheart. He said that he had been having a conversation with his friend. He's like, I think I'm looking for like a young kid like to develop. Like this is exactly what his parameters were for the next client that he was looking for. And then like I just walked down this hallway apparently, and that was it. And his friend's like, "I got your girl," and I only did really.
If we didn't know Terrence, this story is actually quite creepy, but we
Yeah.
actually know that Terrence
Terrence
is a
is
good person.
great.
But I will have to say that, like, the retelling, there's part of it that seems like these days would send up, like, red flags being like,
Well,
but
yeah,
no,
so-
what I'm saying is
so
you were good and he's a great
Yeah,
manager.
he's wonderful.
But I also feel like back then the discovery out and
Yes.
about is kind of like a more traditional story. I
Right.
think it's like
But yeah.
like, probably weirder or like that
Well,
like
maybe
when I
I'm
was a
saying it
kid,
in a way
my
that makes
mom
it
just
sound
kind
but
of
it
like
really wasn't.
No, I'm
So,
sorry.
anyways, I just remember like the first, 2 years of us, because I only moved to California when I was 4, and we didn't move to be an actor or anything. That's not, we moved because my dad got a job out there. But, I just remember being on the freeway a lot. I remember sitting in my booster seat for a long time. I got really good at reading in the backseat of a car without vomiting. And
An important
which is
skill.
It is
lots
an
of
important
auditions
skill.
and lots of Polaroids and a few commercials. And then I was, at my family's house in Rancho Cucamonga, which is where I lived during the first
Oh my God, you had to
year
drive
or two.
so.
I didn't drive, girl.
Well, that's true.
Like we established that I didn't drive until I was 18, really.
Yes.
But
Barely
I
that.
rode a lot. Yeah, so my grandparents, I remember they like helped us pay for my SAG dues the first year when I had to join SAG. When it was eligible, like, it was exciting, right? And but I didn't really know a whole lot about it. And they're like, yeah, your show it got picked up. And I'm like, great. What's that? I remember shooting the pilot and those slippers. They had these slippers that I would wear all the time, and they made them like look really disgustingly dirty on purpose. And
Oh yeah,
I
actually,
remember
do remember.
us jumping around in circles, holding hands by that banister. Like there was a staircase nearby where we were, and then my mom was like, you could do the pilot, but you never know that if it's gonna get picked up. Most of them don't get picked up. And I'm like, okay.
just very true.
And then
It's
the
very
phone call
true.
happens, it gets picked up, and then it's like the phone call every year. It's picked up again and again.
Do you remember where you were when you found out the pilot went?
Yeah,
Like, do you
I
remember
was
that
in the
moment?
kitchen next to our kitchen phone of
The house
of
phone.
Yeah,
the house
Yeah,
phone
house
of our
Because they used
Rancho
to have
Cucamonga
those.
house. It was, by the way, that was a 2-hour commute each direction
To Santa Monica,
to Santa Monica. Yeah,
because that's where we shot.
a lot of time in the 10.
I actually don't remember finding out that we were picked up. I don't have that memory.
I remember we were about to leave the house. I mean, I don't remember much about the context of it, but I just remember like my family was like trying to get out of the house, which is always a process with all of us and all the kids. And then the phone rang and everything stopped. My parents found out, and then it turned into like.
Did any of your siblings audition? Because Chandler did some auditions as well. He broke his arm in one audition.
He broke his arm in an audition?
In an audition.
How do you do that?
When we were like young, we would do this thing, or someone would pick us up, and then we would flip back upside down. And my 4-year-old brother does that to the man he's like testing with in the audition. And the guy dropped him,
Oh, man.
broke his arm.
That sucks.
Poor
I
Chandler.
don't think I don't
yeah.
think I ever had an injury in an audition.
He didn't
No.
really enjoy auditions very much.
That's probably why he didn't.
So not a
continue
great
on an acting-
experience.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
But did you? I don't remember if any of your siblings did it as
Yeah,
well.
all
Did
my brothers and sisters like tried it out for a little while. My sister Michelle did a movie with Mira Sorvino and Michael Imperiali back in the indie film called Sweet Nothing.
Oh, yeah?
And she played her and I think she had a brother. There was 2 little kids, and there was a sequence in the film where I think it was Michael Imperiali like comes in, he comes slamming through the house and breaking stuff and yelling and whatever. And they didn't tell, they wanted to get the kids' reactions to it kind of organically, which they certainly did. My sister
Gosh.
flipped out, and then she was like scared of Michael after that, and like didn't really understand. And after that, I don't think she wanted to do it anymore. Like, and she just kind of like,
Oh.
all of my brothers and sisters did it for a little while and kind of didn't really attach to it in the way that I did. And I kind of went as far as I did in this business because I would go out on a ton of auditions, and I'd go home and I'd be like, great, I'm gonna play my Nintendo, and I would out of sight, out of mind. Like, I was done with the auditions. I didn't care. So
I think
Well, a lot
I
of
just
things in
moved
life
on,
are
you
like
know?
that. If it's not that important to you,
yeah,
it's much easier. It's when you make when something is all the everything that you are about. then it definitely
But I also was lucky in the
increases the
sense that
anxiety.
I had a certain amount of success each year. Every now and then something came through and I would get to be on a set. And being on set for me was like the best. That to me was the best. I loved being
Me
on
too.
set.
But it's
I
like
still love being
100%
on set.
my most comfortable place to be. It's like I know what's expected of me, what to do, where to stand, how to be. It's just like
Yeah, and you feel
it's my
like you're
comfort, like
contributing
home.
and you have a job to
Yeah,
do and you feel
exactly.
important
And you know how to
it's
do
great.
it.
Yeah.
I think also my mom used to say that when I was auditioning, she always used to say like, your turn will come. So I always remembered like when all of my friends would like get, because we'd always be the same people. I was like Scarlett Johansson, Natalie Portman, like all these people I'd go up against and I'd be like, oh, okay, well they get it. Like, you know, and so I knew my time was coming. And I think, you know, I also knew that's also part of like why I fought so hard for Seventh Heaven, because that's the first and only part that I like really was like, no, I really think that this should be it. And I actually think I may have initially went out for Mary and then switched to Lucy. I'm not sure. I think that was part of it, which obviously Lucy was far better for that, because you guys obviously only read for.
But there were other things that we would read for different ones.
I did, and I just remember reading.
I wasn't reading for Simon's part though.
I remember reading the whole pilot too, and just
Boy and his dog.
Thinking,
you had no shot. that was me.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back. I just remember reading the pilot, also being like kind of horrified because it was like that period episode, which is like so uncomfortable and awkward and weird, but also feeling like I'm going to dive for this. Like I'm really going to like go all in and like really like I just even remember talking to props about like how the tampon had to fall out of my shorts pocket and how the hole had to be big enough for the tampon to slip out, and like, but also being very like methodical.
Did
being
you
like,
drop it and then run away?
I did.
I had a flash of this in my head.
It had to like fall out of my pocket, like, you know, because, you know, also because remember the music on Seventh Heaven was just.
It was right on cue.
It was always. And so like, you know, it falls out and like, yeah. But like, what was like one of your favorite scenes in the pilot? Or do you remember?
I think the scene, I mean, like I said, I was really little. And I just remember when you and Jesse and I were holding hands and we had to jump up and down around in a circle.
That's in the opening credits.
And I remember those big giant slippers that I was wearing for like many episodes.
And you were wearing the overalls, right?
And the overalls, yeah.
Wait, actually, I have some pictures.
And
wait, I think I have a picture.
Happy.
Oh, David, that's you. And
I remember us shooting, like we took a bunch of pictures outside in the backyard of that house.
Wait, you guys. Look at that.
My white blonde hair, my Timberland boots.
Now this is just classic us.
Yeah, look at that.
Look at that.
Oh, I wore a lot of denim.
You did wear
Everybody
a lot of denim.
wore
I think
a lot
we
of
all
denim
wore a lot
back
of
then.
denim. It was
The Canadian tuxedo.
This is also, by the way, I found these are straight out of my scrapbooks. Because remember, I had all my scrapbooks.
Very
they're
funny.
a record keeper.
Reliving all these pictures from the pilot. And I think actually these were all the ones from us getting our photo shoots.
Jeez.
For like to try to get all of our.
Oh my gosh! Little smile.
Look at just one of my favorite things too is like we worked back in the day when they would say rolling, and that's because it actually was rolling. And when we had to say cut, check the gate because there were gates. Like everything wasn't digital. Like we really you had to check the mag.
We grew up, taking Polaroids every day for continuity, and so it was a very analog. It was a very analog time.
And it was look at you and there's you and Barry.
Oh my god!
With that hair.
My mom's hair is pretty cool in this too.
We've got
oh my god! This car, Eric's first car,
yeah.
And then did they crash it or something?
The station wagon.
And I think we did.
Or did we drive it?
No, I think Jesse and I did it. No, Jesse and I did it. I think Jesse and I crashed the car.
It.
But remember Sam Weisman, our first director, he always used to say, energy, 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 energy. Mm-hmm. And then we had to do jumping jacks.
Yeah.
Like 10 jumping jacks before every scene. Or actually before every take.
Did I remember that too?
Well, and for context, so
Dawn holding my feet to the ground, so I didn't wiggle out of frame.
every episode of TV, the directors come in and rotate. And eventually what happens is you get your kind of favorite directors come back and you amass like a set of directors that will then rotate and the style kind of streamlines. But in the beginning, you never know what you're going to get with a bunch of rotating directors. So that I remember, especially in the first season, we stylistically with the directors, it was kind of all over the place. Yeah. And the high energy stuff always felt strange because we were a family show. We were a drama.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I mean, I guess it was kind of melodramatic, but like we didn't have like sitcom energy.
No,
like that was not the vibe.
Yeah.
And the director was in charge. You'd always have to kind of follow the leader in that way. And so like playing that game with all the different directors was really funny in the beginning.
And for everyone who's listening and you want to see some of these pictures, we will absolutely be posting some of this magic. And you also might see some of my great scrapbooking skills and lots of stickers because I require apparently a lot of stickers.
Your scrapbooking has some great 90s colors, by the way.
I also have some really good...
You have the pink, blue, and the yellow.
I have some great
There's
captions.
a standard 90s palette, some orange in here.
I have, and apparently you hit it out of the park and you are part of my Bev's Buds section.
Let's see that.
With
God.
Mack and David.
Bev's Buds.
You are my Bev's Buds. And then
I love that you captioned all
do you
of these.
remember the Honeywagons? Because
Of course
Sure,
I do.
of course.
Because, you know, a lot of people...
Look, here are the ratty slippers I was talking about.
I know, I remember that. Because you know what? A lot of people used to think like it was very... Like on set, you've like really made it and you have all these beautiful like trailers. But
We were all in the
that is not the situation.
Honeywagon.
We were
No, I spent
Honeywagons
most of my early
and
career in
you were number
Honeywagons.
6, right?
and Honeywagons
5.
for the audience to understand what a Honeywagon is. It's basically like a glorified closet with a toilet inside it. It's like
You
literally
can't even really sit down, actually. The
No.
bench is just wide enough to be slightly uncomfortable for the human behind.
Yes. And so I remember Jesse and I were right next to each other. So we would open up our Honeywagon to make it feel bigger.
Right.
Oh,
So
you
that
would
there's-
open
we
the
would
doors
always
between
so there was
you.
usually a Honeywagon is just a big trailer
Closet.
truck
Walking
with
closet.
like 8
Closet.
or 9 doors,
Yes.
right? So
A toilet.
little hallways going down the side of the truck, and each one, you know, as you have rotating actors coming in and out, everyone would kind of get one, and then they'd rotate them for new actors as they'd come and go. But in the beginning, we all had Honeywagons, like, you know.
And then
it
you
was-
get a half banger.
But that's
And then you
That's
get
when
a
you-
full trailer.
That's
getting
the whole
the
trailer
half
yourself.
banger though. That felt like we made it.
We
Like that
did,
was like,
yeah.
woo! We had a
Who were you
nice
sharing a half
trailer.
banger with?
Oh, I don't
Was it me?
remember. You know,
Then
this
we
was
all
also.
got upgraded to a whole full trailer.
That was a while. That took us a while to
It
get
took us a
to
while,
really,
but
like,
eventually,
yeah.
we each had a trailer.
I remember
Look at us now.
I did my breakfast sitting in front of the furnace of my trailer, like
Oh, I
every
used to do
single
that too.
day.
I
Get the
used-
burrito and cross like it
my
right
favorite
in front of the
my favorite thing
furnace.
for catering was like a BLT. I had a BLT every morning.
I got the same thing every day too.
Every
for like
morning.
6 months, I'd eat the same thing every day for breakfast, and then I would switch and eat something else for 6 months straight.
The best part of sets, by the way, is the fact that
Catering.
you have catering
Food.
and you can eat. Like, if your caterer is really cool, then you can have whatever you'd like.
Juan
Like,
and
if the
Alicia
caterer
were
loves you,
just-
they'll make you whatever you want.
God.
And Juan and Eligio and Juan,
like
man,
literally,
they were
the heroes.
awesome. And I just remember just being like, you just have whatever you want for breakfast.
I
They
also-
make me
you're just
pancakes
like,
every
"What?"
day.
My favorite
It's
too
incredible.
is
Reason I
like
got up in the
they would
morning.
have it ready for me
Other than-
every morning. Like I never even had to order because they knew like one, I was quite predictable, and so they always had it ready.
I think
for
most
me.
of us all settled into like our
yeah.
favorite breakfasts. Yeah.
What were your top 3 breakfast meals?
Mine was the same thing. I had a
The
BLT,
BLT.
every morning.
Was
Never.
David at pancakes?
It was
there any-
pancakes
any other-
usually. If I was feeling fancy, it was pancakes or like a breakfast burrito.
Mine was a breakfast burrito with turkey, mushrooms, ham and cheese, or an English muffin sandwich with ham, eggs, and cheese. Or the other third option was scrambled eggs with turkey and toast.
Nice.
so they
And I would
could-
just rotate between those
They
3 dishes.
couldn't pre-make
Nice.
because they didn't know what you
Well,
were feeling in the
generally,
morning.
because I'd make the switch to one for a season
Oh, got it.
and then switch to the other one. It was hard the day where you switch breakfasts. It's like switching time zone or like daylight savings. It's like, ugh.
So were you guys ever like let's go back to the pilot.
All right,
I think we jumped ahead.
We veered, yes.
So back to the pilot. I don't really remember necessarily being nervous, or if I was nervous, it was like when I got home. But like being on set, I just remember like I always stepped up and felt like this was where I belonged, and like it felt like home. Set
Same.
always felt
That was the
like
most
safe.
my
and
favorite
home.
place to be, and it was like where I was comfortable and just knowing what's expected of you, and how that's a comforting
Yeah, I
thing.
always felt super comfortable on set. I was
and
never
everyone
nervous
was so
on set.
nice. They're and supportive. Like, what's not to like? It was great.
I know. I think it's, again, we had such a unique experience because it wasn't the norm to have a set that was so warm, welcoming, and where we truly were all there for each other and like were.
I mean, it was a kid-friendly set. There were so many of us.
Yeah,
so I think in a way, you kind of keep set drama away from the kids. Like it has, so
if there was we weren't aware that it
I'm sure
existed.
there was set drama that was happening around us and it just didn't have nothing to do with us, and that was fine. But from my perspective, it was always friendly and fun, and so much of the crew was like family to us and would hang out with us. And
it was kind of a young crew, I feel like, too, right? Was it not sort of like I remember?
Well, I think there was definitely those that were more experienced that were definitely like had been around for a long time, and then there were definitely
there were a lot
the
of
younger
people
that had,
I felt like that I could play with.
but
or maybe it was only me thinking I was playing, and they were just like, maybe it was pestering.
I also remember you
Sure.
looking straight into the camera, thinking that they wouldn't notice.
I also would cross my eyes a lot, thinking
you
they didn't notice.
Didn't you do that?
And then I would fold
you do the
my eye,
yes.
this like weird
Well,
eye trick, and
I
also
it.
thought no one could notice.
Yeah, and then you also you didn't like to be straight on your mark, so I remember Dawn literally standing underneath
I was like
you.
this, and then they started giving me Adderall, which was like.
And then I also remember sandbags. We had to sandbag you too, like put the sandbags around your feet.
I had
so
to
that
wear skirts all the time because I would sit with like this.
I do remember that.
And I had to sit on Fernie pads a lot too.
I also remember I used to
But
drive.
I have a little girl. Skirts are where it's at.
Are where it's at. Yeah. I mean, what were they thinking? Trying to put a 5-year-old in a skirt. It's probably their fault, not mine.
And I also I do remember that Jesse and I used to have our own battles though too, because we were so close in age and so entirely different.
Were you competing for Barry's affections?
I mean, for like a millisecond, we thought Barry was hot until then we got to know him. And
Just
we're like,
a millisecond.
It was
all of us thought Barry was hot for just a millisecond.
It was a millisecond.
Not any longer than that, I promise.
As soon as we got to know Barry, it was like, no, you're not hot anymore. You're just Barry. Which by the way, today is actually Barry's birthday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Today? Because I thought it was
today.
like last week.
No, like today.
No,
happy birthday,
like as
Barry.
in today.
Happy birthday, Barry.
Which actually, I believe.
So once Bev got to know about Barry's personality, hey, happy birthday, Barry.
No, I'm just saying. No, let me go full circle. I'm coming back around.
Right.
Actually, on the pilot, it was Barry's birthday also. When we
really?
shot it.
So wait, is this the anniversary of the pilot being shot? Obviously,
Yeah.
it would be. Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah,
it
we're
is.
pretty.
That's why
close
we're
to it.
shooting this.
That's why
today.
we're shooting the podcast, is because it's a
First
anniversary
day
of when we shot the pilot.
And of Barry's life.
And
Barry. Yeah.
so many years ago, 1996, baby.
1996.
You might not
the pilot.
96.
96. Yep.
Yeah.
From what I remember of shooting the pilot is that all of my audition stuff was about the dog. All my scenes in the pilot was talking to Steven about how that I was praying to God because I wanted a dog.
Backwards?
Did you know God is dog spelled backwards? All of these things were my moments in the pilot. And what's funny about it, what I remember about it is that I was the New York kid and I was fresh out of New York. So my New York accent was thick. And what many people might not remember about the 90s was that back in the 90s, New York accents were pretty standard. They were like, it was normal in films and in television shows for people to have New York accents. And like, it wasn't a thing. It was kind of American. And then in the late 90s into the 2000s, New York accents, like kind of the California became neutral American like accent. And I had to learn to not sound like I was fresh out of New York. But all of my lines were about axing God for a dog. And I couldn't like, for the life of me, figure out how to not sound like that. And I remember the directors trying to help me and everyone trying to help me. And I remember them going to my mom and being like, he keeps saying dog. Can you talk to him? And my mom looks at the AD and goes, what's wrong with the way he says dog? And they were like, oh no. Dog. And, so, like,
and we'll be right back.
At some point, I remember in one scene, and you could probably see this. I'm sure if we watch the pilot, you can hear it. Because I had to say that I asked God for a dog, which is easy to say now. But I couldn't say ask, that I asked.
You asked?
Oh, that's actually
right.
Asked.
Asked. Right?
Yeah.
And that was the hardest, it was like the biggest challenge I'd ever had on a set. And Steven was like, just say asked. And I was like, I can't say that. You know? And he's like, you can, it'll be fine. So I did. And that's how I got through it. I said that I asked God for a dog. And I could manage to say dog, but I couldn't say asked. And
I'm gonna
yeah, so we'll have to see if you can hear it. But I specifically remember that like that was the trick that like got me through. Was that I had to like say it a different thing to kind of like squeeze it in there and get it past everybody. But yeah, that was my struggle, was that I still had a very thick New York accent, and none of you guys did.
No.
And so I had to hide it.
But by the way, that's also the cutest scene ever, and you are absolutely adorable. And it just so like
cute.
My hair looks bleached. But that was just my hair color. Yeah, no, I mean, I was,
that blonde.
I was the blonde kid.
And my bangs really were that strong. My bang gang. That sounds terrible. That is, I strike that.
You got that backwards, actually.
I'm not even gonna say no.
Sorry.
I just, oh my gosh. Insert foot in mouth.
Oh man.
Oh boy, you keep going.
Okay.
Can cut the tension with those bangs.
So I think that this is a perfect spot for us to end this episode, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it and get ready to come back to catch up with the Camdens on next week's episode. We're done.